Welcome to A Republican Professor. I'm your host, Dr. Lucas J. Mather. I also have a college degree. I'm here in the backyard. We're leaving today. It's Friday of Color 2025. And on this Friday of Color, I would highly recommend you remember the Lord and what you're thankful for. It's not just on Thanksgiving. It's on the day after Thanksgiving, which is traditionally, well, the racists called it Black Friday. And earlier on, there was even worse names for it. But back when Democrat segregation was in play. But we call it Friday of Color now because it's just holier to do that. We have a reading from Psalm 130. We also have a reading from Streams in the Desert, January 21st, and we're getting to the Age of Entitlement, the chapter on sex. Yes, you did hear that right, and no, there's no pictures, okay? So I know that all of you who just heard that, you're leaving, but we're going to have a few pages in this issue of the gender issue. Chris Caldwell's book is subtitled America Since the 60s, The Age of Entitlement. We're going through this book. We're going to make a fair use of it, do a transformative reading. But because it is Friday of Color, 2025, it's 28 November 2025 years after Jesus. And it's a Friday after Thanksgiving. Here's Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. O Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my pleas for mercy. If you, O Lord, should mark iniquities, O Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness, that you may be feared. I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord, more than watchmen for the morning, more than watchmen for the morning. O Israel, hope in the Lord, for with the Lord there is steadfast love, and with him is plentiful redemption. And he will redeem Israel from all his iniquities. Psalm 130, ESV, English Standard Version, a moment of reflection. Like I said, we're in the backyard. We do not have the waterfall going, but there is a small waterfall right there coming from the spa to the pool. And that's where the waterfall would normally be coming out. This is morning time. This is when I do my Bible study out here. Typically, I do my reading, and it's coffee time. Okay, let's get a close up of this waterfall with the spa. Isn't that lovely? Wouldn't be good if I fell in, so. All right. So we have Streams in the Desert. January 21st, we started Streams in the Desert the day before Charlie Kirk was murdered by a Democrat. And so we're going to continue here. Sun hitting that pool. Okay. Let's continue. This is not my house, as you know. I've said it like a million times. It's my epistemology mentor, Dr. Doug Guyvett. He's been my epistemology mentor for almost a quarter century. He himself was trained by Dallas Willard of USC Philosophy Department. We got Black Rifle Coffee Company and hot water. And the way I keep my coffee warm out here, because I hate lukewarm coffee, even though my name is Luke. You'd think I would like lukewarm coffee. I also don't like cold coffee. So we like hot coffee. So what I do is I put a little bit in. Black Rifle Coffee Company, not a paid sponsor. Got this in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Okay. All right. So let's do Streams in the Desert. Just going straight through. Did January 20th last night. And we're doing January 21st. Wait. Yahud up. Yeah, January 21st. None of these things move me. Acts 20:24. We read in the book of Samuel that the moment that David was crowned at Hebron, all the Philistines came up to seek David. And the moment we get anything from the Lord worth contending for, then the devil comes to seek us. When the enemy meets us at the threshold of any great work for God, let us accept it as a token of salvation and claim double blessing, victory, and power. Power is developed by resistance. The cannon carries twice as far because the exploding power has to find its way through resistance. The way electricity is produced in the powerhouse yonder is by the sharp friction of the revolving wheels. Yeah. So we shall find someday that even Satan has been one of God's agencies of blessing. That's from Days of Heaven Upon Earth. A hero is not fed on sweets. A hero is not fed on sweets. Daily is his own heart he eat. Oh my gosh, I'm screwing this up. Sorry. A hero is not fed on sweets. Daily his own heart he eats. Chambers of the great are jails, and headwinds right for royal sails. That's from Emerson. Tribulation is the way to triumph. The valley way opens into the highway. Tribulation's imprint is on all great things. Crowns are cast in crucibles. Chains of character that wind about the feet of God are forged in earthly flames. No man is greatest victor until he has trodden the winepress of woe. With seams of anguish deep in his brow, the man of sorrows said, "In the world ye shall have tribulation. But after this sob comes the psalms of promise. Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." The footprints are traceable everywhere. Blood marks stain the steps that lead to thrones. Scars are the price of scepters. Our crowns will be wrested from the giants we conquer. Grief has always been the lot of greatness. It is an open secret. The mark of rank in nature is capacity for pain, and the anguish of the singer makes the sweetest of the strain. Tribulation has always marked the trail of the true reformer. It is the story of Paul, Luther, Savonarola, don't know that name, Knox, Wesley, and all the rest of the mighty army. They came through the great tribulation to their place of power. Sorry, they came through great tribulation. Glad I corrected that because I'm going to get some emails. Every great book has been written with the author's blood. These are they that have come out of great tribulation. Who was the peerless poet of the Greeks? Homer. But that illustrious singer was blind. Who wrote the fadeless stream of Pilgrim's Progress? A prince in royal purple upon a couch of ease. Oh, sorry. Screwed that one up. A prince of royal purple upon a couch of ease? Nay. The trailing splendor of that vision gilded the dingy walls of old Bedford jail, where John Bunyan, a princely prisoner, a glorious genius, made a faithful transcript of the scene. Great is the facile conqueror, yet haply he who wounded sore, breathless, all covered o'er with blood and sweat, sinks fainting, but fighting evermore, is greater yet. That's from Selected. How helpful. Thank you. That was great. January 21st, Streams in the Desert, a moment of reflection. We have an audience. Some animals. They are rodents. Squirrels. Okay, kids, let's get to the Age of Entitlement and get through a little bit of the sex chapter. This whole book is really good. Takes a while to digest it. And we're going to make a fair use, do a transformative reading of it. I highly recommend you get the book. And I don't even do drugs. So the fact that I can highly recommend that is a big deal. Because I don't do very many things highly. Let's get to it. Age of Entitlement. Here's the book again. Simon & Schuster, 2020. We'd like to thank Simon & Schuster for making this material available. We'd like to thank Chris Caldwell for writing it. Put a lot of labor into this. It's a labor of love. I impersonally think that you shouldn't get it, but personally, I think you should. Let's get to it. Get your own copy. Follow along. Here's the subtitles we're going to get to today. Here's the subtitles of the chapter on sex: the GI generation and its failures. Here's the next one: the feminine mystique and male sexism. We're not going to get to that one today. That will be next time. Playboy and male sexuality. Gloria Steinem, capitalism and class. Roe versus Wade in the Supreme Court. Our bodies, ourselves. Equal Rights Amendment. All that is coming up on future episodes. We're only going to get to the GI one today because I got to do some cleaning to get out of my epistemology mentor's house. They're coming back tonight. We're going to do laundry and stuff like that. Make sure everything's nice for them. I like to thank Dr. Doug Guyvet and Holly Pivick for coming on the podcast to talk about the New Apostolic Reformation. Check out that episode. It's a great episode. You'll get a small taste of his talents, and I mean a very small, because he was my epistemology mentor, and religious epistemology specifically. Guy is dialed in, and he knows what's going on, dude. All right, here's sex according to, well, it's just the chapter on sex, I should say, in the Age of Entitlement, Chris Caldwell. Second wave feminism began in 1963. Betty Friedan published The Feminine Mystique a few months before President Kennedy was shot. Her preoccupations were not those of the first wave of 19th century abolitionists, prohibitionists, and suffragists. She did not philosophize about the inequalities, incompatibilities, and quarrels that feminist Robin Morgan called a 5,000-year buried anger. Friedan was describing something more modest: the ground women had lost since she herself had gone to all-female Smith College in western Massachusetts in the late 1930s. Of course she went to college. Of course. The GI generation and its failures. It was a hard argument to make because most of that ground had been lost in World War II. The U.S. military enjoyed vast prestige. Yeah. Its victories on 2 continents were vivid in most people's memories. At its urging, scientists had invented a weapon of unprecedented destructive power. So much devastation had the war wrought on the industrial bases of other advanced nations that, in the war's immediate aftermath, America not only set the rules for most of the world's economy, but also produced 60% of its manufacturing output. We're on page 37 at the top. Until the war, though, the Great Depression had put America's civilian institutions on a decade-long losing streak. It now seemed reasonable to reassign the country's only successful leadership class and its only successful culture of leadership from the battlefield to the boardroom, the shop floor, and the faculty club. Coffee's getting cold. Crap. Just lost some Black Rifle Coffee Company. Dang it. Stuff is like gold. You don't want to lose it. We're on 37 at the top. You want to see what this coffee looks like? Isn't that beautiful? This is what happened. By the mid-1950s, half the seats in Congress were held by mostly quite young veterans. Their domination of Congress would keep rising through the decades, peaking in 1971 when vets held 75% of the seats. They dominated journalism too. The intimate interaction between press and president in the 1,000 days of John F. Kennedy's administration, recalled Washington Post journalist Robert G. Kaiser, depended on the existence of a like-minded cohort of World War II veterans, soldiers, and journalists who covered the war, who shared a view of America's destiny. It was a manly world knit together socially out of wartime memories and gilded in the decisions by wartime rules of thumb. Vets called society's tune. Their tastes and preoccupations were presented as normal for the whole country. Advertisements from the color magazines of the 1940s and 50s followed the arc of a GI's fantasies across the years. They were a mix of technology and animal spirits. Everything was dressed up as rocket science. Oldsmobile had the Rocket 2002 engine, while Pontiac had the Strato Streak V8 and Strato Flight Hydra-Matic. Post-war women's swimsuits were as animally sexual as those of the supposedly libertine 1970s would be, albeit in a different fashion idiom. Reticulated singlets for the earlier decade, string two-piece for the later. As the 1950s progressed, as the GIs entered middle age, bust lines rose, hemlines fell, and women loaded up with jewelry. Naturally, men too young to have fought in the war carried themselves as if they had. To shuffle through a track of Topps baseball cards from 1963, or even baseball being at the time a relatively conservative sport from 1969, is to see an almost uninterrupted procession of military-looking crew cuts. 24 teams, 600 young men, page 38 at the top, and not a single mustache or beard among them. When Richie Allen of the St. Louis Cardinals and Philippe Alou of the Oakland Athletics began growing mustaches in 1970, they were the first players to have worn them since the 1930s. Socially, the country was conservative. The early 1960s, we can see now, had more in common with the turn of the last century, 2 generations back, than with the turn of the next, only 1 generation away. Smoking was cool, not semi-criminal. President Kennedy himself smoked Petite Upmann cigars. His wife, menthol cigarettes, either Newports or Salems. You could take up German in public high schools, but not Chinese. And poetry made up a considerable part of a high school English curriculum. Mary, the most popular girl's name in the United States for generations, nosed out only briefly by Linda after World War II, had fallen again to number 2 in 1962 behind Lisa. By early in the 21st century, it would fall completely out of the top 100. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Be right back. Had to put the towels in the dryer. They're heavy, and especially when they're wet. So the man does it. Oh, and we're reading a chapter about sex. What? What a coincidence! What a coincidence! I didn't plan that. Yeah, I do the laundry around here. It's because it's heavy, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. Do a little bit of more coffee. I think I earned it after that towel load. I realize I did need a spoon, but I don't want to stir it with my pen. I could stir it with my pocket knife, I suppose. We do have a K-bar pocket knife on display here. I guess I'll just stir it like this. And I'll remember to wash the, I gotta remember, don't let me forget, wash the coffee after that.
I thought you were going to say wash your knife.
I don't need to wash my knife. Let's keep going. U-Boob is probably going to take that off now. You were displaying a dangerous weapon. No. I was educating the Republican professor viewer on a historically we're talking about GIs and war, and this is a K-bar. It's issued to the military. K-bar, man. You know what I mean? See? All right. Let us continue. Weeknight television was made up almost wholly of westerns and Army serials. For the 1962-1963 season, ABC showed in its primetime slot, 7:30 p.m. back then, Cheyenne on Monday, followed by Rifleman at 8:30. Yeah! Combat on Tuesday, Wagon Train on Wednesday, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet on Thursday, Gallant Men on a World War II drama on Friday. Odd that in later years Ozzie and Harriet would become a symbol of post-war American conformism. At ABC in 1963, it broke the macho mold. NBC's Tuesday through Thursday offerings in that time slot were Laramie, The Virginian, and Wide Country, with the high-ranking Bonanza as a 9 p.m. Sunday night treat. Yeah! CBS had less of a Western orientation during the week, confining its 7:30 p.m. shows to Marshall Dillon Tuesday, Rawhide Yeah on Friday, leaving its main Western programming for late Saturday night with Have Gun, Will Travel, and Gunsmoke. You would think women didn't watch television at all. A TV guide from early in the Johnson administration featured an article expressing mild astonishment that ladies' golf would be shown on television. The fair sex takes to the fairways. Followed by a profile of a foreign correspondent, the American Broadcasting Company's woman reporter, Lisa Howard, and that was a direct quote. Woman reporter, Lisa Howard. Page 39 at the top. We're only going to page 42, so just hang in there. All of the countries that fought World War II emerged from it with deep-grained habits of regimentation in both political and civilian life. Unlike the other countries, though, the victorious United States lacked any reason such as humiliation, atonement, economic crisis, lost empire, or foreign occupation to re-examine the habits of that martial era. Americans still believed with their whole hearts in science and progress, in a way that would have been hard for, say, Germans to do. That's very insightful. Magazine ads presented various synthetic polymers, nylon, acrylon, Orlon, as fashionable to wear, largely because they were newly invented. I see where he's going with this. This is good. This is really good. But there wasn't as much progress as Americans wanted to think. The smashed industrial infrastructure of Western Europe was being thoroughly rebuilt. America, the New World, suddenly found itself the most ancient part of the industrialized West. From coast to coast, even in larger cities, there was a hokiness, a Victorian provinciality. Many women in the 1960s and 1970s still sewed their own clothes. Most mothers owned sewing machines. Most of the products of high technology, color TV sets, for example, color TV sets, for instance, which would come by 1972 to outsell black and white, were cabineted in wood as if they had come out of a lumber mill. Oh, that's funny. I'm dating myself. When I was a kid, I had a black and white TV in my bedroom, and I thought it was awesome. I mean, not for very long. I was probably a year or two, but I remember that clearly. I think it was like in 7th grade or something. I can't remember. Man, a black and white television set. Look at that sky. It's all blue today, bud. All blue. Not to bring up health food, but let us continue. Take another drink of water. I'm trying to stay hydrated. No one wants to hear someone slurping water, so that's why I muted it. Oh, that is funny. That part about the wood panel TV set is funny. As if it had come out of a lumber mill. You see why he's one of my favorite writers in American politics. Despite the promise of limited exploration in space, in the early 1960s, the Industrial Revolution was no longer producing anything revolutionary. The theorist of management Peter Drucker, he's affiliated with Claremont Colleges, by the way, where I went to school. A lot of my classes were in the Drucker building. The theorist of management Drucker noted that the world's markets were beginning to unify. The world's technology leader, IBM, was now producing an astonishing 1,000 computers a month, and plastics appeared to be a new industry of major importance. But otherwise, the country remained stuck in the age of Edison, Bell, and Westinghouse. Drucker warned that the economy, and here's a block quote, had been carried largely by industries that were already big business before World War I. It had been based on technologies that were firmly established by 1913 to exploit inventions made in the half-century before. Technologically, the last 50 years have been the fulfillment of promises bequeathed to us by our Victorian grandparents. Almost all the steel mills built since World War II use processes that date back to the 1860s and were already considered obsolescent 50 years ago. And there's not one major feature on any car anywhere today that would not have been found on some commercially available make in 1913. Measured by the yardsticks of the economist, the last half century has been an age of continuity. the period of least change in the 300 years or so. End quote. That's the end of the block quote. Top of page 40. That quote was from Drucker, Peter Drucker. We're in the age of entitlement. Christopher Caldwell, America Since the 60s. It's published by Simon & Schuster, 2020. Go out and get a physical copy. You can see I got a hard copy. Here's a picture of Chris Caldwell. That's his high school yearbook picture. Christopher Caldwell is contributing editor at Claremont Review of Books and a contributing opinion writer for the New York Slimes. He was previously a senior editor at the Weekly Standard. Weekly is spelled Weakly. And a columnist for the Financial Times. He is the author of Reflections on the Revolution in Europe, Immigration, Islam, and the West. It's blurbed on the back by Andrew Roberts, Victor Davis Hanson, and Matthew B. Crawford. Andrew Roberts is billed as New York Times best-selling author. Victor Davis Hanson is billed as author of The Case for Trump. This is Simon & Schuster, New York, 2020. Okay. This is, you got to have this book. This was delivered to me October 30th, 2021, Saturday at 7:30 p.m., sent by my former political philosophy student from Moorpark College, fall 2008, Matt Stone, Moorpark College. Thank you, Matt Stone, for sending this to me for the podcast. For my birthday that year, I just asked people to send certain titles because I was trying to get the podcast off the ground and I knew it was going to be a book-centered ordeal. Page 40 in the middle. When the countercultural historian Theodore Rozek, I don't know how to say that last name, introduced his study of post-industrial problems in Where the Wasteland Ends, 1972, the problems were the same urban industrial ones you'd have found in the mid-19th century. The slums, the repetitiveness of factory work, the sameness of mass-produced merchandise, the joylessness of small-town life. World War II vets would, in their old age, be lionized as their country's greatest generation for their achievements abroad and at home, but considered as a generation of domestic policymakers, they compiled a record that was modest in most things, dismal in many. You got to really listen up here, especially you kids and you older people and you people in the middle. Basically everybody, just listen up, okay? Listen to what he's saying. We need to look not only at how they stormed Omaha Beach, but also at the identically shoddy, low-slung, asphalt-moated, asbestos-lined brick junior high schools they built from coast to coast and deemed good enough for their children. Oh man, that was brutal. He's going after the older people. He's going after the older people. Look at that coffee. Look at that. Oh, I don't want it to stick on the knife. What did I expect? What did I expect would happen? I'm going to have to lick that like a pirate. I'm not gonna on camera. No one's gonna see this anyway, so. It's not hot enough. Dang it. Dadgummit. There we go. Here, let's think critically here. Let's think critically.
Let's use logic.
Introduction to logic. How to get coffee off of your K-bar knife. Come on, kids. You all have knives, right? Get your logic book out. And your Black Rifle Coffee Company. Coffee. We use logic. It is tasty coffee. I'll give them that. All right. Where were we? Man, this is good. So he's talking about the greatest generation, the so-called greatest generation. Not only at how the managers of the Marshall Plan provided the resources to rebuild the bomb-wrecked city centers of Rotterdam and Frankfurt, but also at how between 1962 and 1968, Boston city planners, led by the architect I.M. Pei, destroyed 8 acres of ancient streets, apartments, factories, and stores around Scully Square in order to build nothing except Calman, McKinnell, and Knowles windblown wasteland. City Hall Plaza, centered on the, I don't know how to say that, Mildwy concrete monument to government high-handedness. Go right to it. That's the way I feel about it, President Harry S. Truman said in 1952, urging Washington, D.C. authorities to proceed with a plan that would demolish the downtown row houses in which 25,000 residents lived. They had included Al Jolson and Marvin Gaye, and replace them with concrete towers. There was a maleness to these failures. This is page 41 at the top. Oh, looks like we're going. Yeah, okay. We're almost done here. There was a maleness to these failures. The country worked all right, but in a way that was transactional, aggressive, and indelicate. Uniformity marked the post-war built landscape, from billboards to housing projects to corporate headquarters. When the dyspeptic University of Michigan literature professor John Aldridge looked out on America's post-war suburban neighborhoods, then still under construction, he saw Army attitudes brought home and a war zone along with them. It resembled nothing so much as the military world we had just escaped, he recalled in the late 1960s. From coast to coast, we bulldozed the land into rubble, tore out the grass, uprooted the trees, and laid out thousands and thousands of miles of company streets, all lined with family-sized barracks. Oh, damn. Damn, dude. In President Dwight D. Eisenhower's view, the great boon of the Highway Act of 1956 was that it made the country easier for U.S. military vehicles to traverse and thus easier to defend against attack. It incidentally tied the country together in ways that promoted trucking and automotive vacationing and eviscerated, enervated, and devitalized many small towns and urban neighborhoods. Still, the glow that surrounded Americans' reminiscences I'm having a Friday of color brain fog moment. Still, the glow that surrounded Americans' reminiscences of the Second World War and their understanding of their role in the world was hard to dim. It suffuses memoirs of the 1950s and 1960s. Americans were prospering, according to the news anchorman Tom Brokaw, from the same passions and disciplines that had served them so well in the war. The historian George Marsden recalled his 1950s childhood as a time when the United States had been thrown into a position of world leadership. Thrown into, Americans, like many victorious peoples, mistook the fruits of conquest for the rewards of virtue. That's a nice turn of phrase. I'm going to mark that with my pencil. Always have a pencil when you're reading a book like this. You don't want to mark it up with pen. Ask me how I know. I don't know why it took me so long to learn that, but I should have learned it a long time ago. I mean, I did learn it a long time ago. I should have learned it right away is what I meant to say. Always have a pencil with an eraser because different things will stand out to you as you're going through this material. And the goal of going through this material, in case you don't know, is to enrich you and make you smarter, wiser, with greater understanding, more useful for you, to your fellow man, to humanity, to the flourishing of the world. That's the whole point. Okay. So I'm going to point out that I really like that. And I just do it with a check mark. Okay. And you can erase them. Some of my earliest books, textbooks, I used pen and I underlined. I've got textbooks where some of it looks almost like every line is underlined. So I didn't have mentoring on these basic things. I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. And so I'm just passing it on to you. Take it or leave it, okay? Maybe you had better mentors than I did originally. I didn't have a lot of mentoring when I was a kid. Okay. Well, I'm talking about when I was really little. Maybe I just didn't listen, but I think I actually listened quite a bit. Probably more than most people. All right, so I'm going to say that sentence again. Americans, like many victorious peoples, mistook the fruits of conquest for the rewards of virtue. They repressed, for the most part, their memory of the Korean War, the deadly stalemate into which Truman had drawn them in 1950. Page 42 at the top, we have one more paragraph. What marvels might America not accomplish if it could only sharpen its sense of purpose? Modern people, after all, were smarter than anyone else had ever been. When the Gallup polling group asked Americans in the first month of the 1960s whether the human race is getting better or worse from the point of view of intelligence, 73% said better, 7% said worse. This is the sort of confidence you would expect from a country about to put a man on the moon, or about to sacrifice the lives of tens of thousands of its young men in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Page 42 at the top. Age of Entitlement. Christopher Caldwell, America Since the 60s. The next segment here in this chapter, sex, called Sex, is the feminine mystique and male sexism. And like I said, there's no pictures, so don't get too excited. Well, I guess there are pictures, but they're just pictures of sentences written in English. Thanks for joining me on The Republican Professor on this special edition, the Friday of Color edition, 2025, the Friday after Thanksgiving. This is the very last episode we're going to be doing of The Republican Professor until the next one. So I thought I would give you that announcement. I'm just making notes about this has been 28 November 2025, years after Jesus. It's Friday of Color, 2025. I've been your host, Dr. Lucas J. Mather. We'll talk to you later.